everyone. Walter Crosby, Helix Sales Development, your host for day 3 of the 5-day hiring challenge. Just sending out a link to somebody who didn't get it, so you should be joining us here momentarily. So I wanted to say thank you for hanging in for 3 days. Today's edition is jam-packed. We're gonna drive through. Here we go. Hannah's in the stage. So welcome, Hannah. We're gonna cover ways to save time, ways to make this very simple for you and your team to be able to execute the various steps along the way. We're going to talk about sort of the magic behind STORE, a tool that we use that really makes it simple to determine if somebody's going to be a great fit by using what we did at the front end, figuring out the role configuration, making sure that we're aligned with that the candidate is aligned with what we want them to do. They have the skills, they have the mindset, and they have the desire and commitment to do the things that we want to do. So we're going to talk about that questionnaire, that assessment. That's really the magic. And then we're gonna jump in and do the show you the phone screen and the aspects of that. So we really have a jam-packed day today. So I want to get going right away. But I want to start off with talking about an example of the job posting that one of our guests is kind enough to. Hannah, I'm going to unmute you. You can say hello to the group. Did I unmute you? There you go.
Hi, everyone.
So, Hannah, can you give like sort of a background of the company and what you're looking for, and then I'm going to share the job posting that you created that I think checks all the marks.
Sure. Yeah. We are a landscaping design, build, and maintenance firm located here in St. Louis. What we've been looking for is a specific business to consumer, direct to homeowner sales rep to join our team. They would essentially just be kind of running and qualifying inbound leads, trying to turn those into some pretty high dollar, complex backyard and outdoor additions for us, and then closing and handing that off to operations. So it's more so a pretty heavy like closing role that we've been looking for.
It's a top of the funnel. Like you're going to provide them with most of the leads that they're going to need to be able to be successful and hit their numbers. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep. We've got more leads than we know what to do with. We just need someone to come out and close them.
All right. So I mean, this is a role that isn't. We wouldn't consider it a hunting role, but what's really important here is for somebody to be able to go talk to a prospect and really understand them, make them feel understood, and then taking it to a close. And there's some steps there. We don't need to get into all the steps of how you guys run the business, but I'm sharing the ad that you put together, and I think it fits the framework really well. You got a great title here to help people understand what it is that they're looking for. And can you kind of walk through a little bit here, Hannah? You're explaining the industry, and then you're explaining what other areas that they should have some experience in that first paragraph, right?
Sure. Yeah. We've found it most helpful for our sales staff to have a little bit at least of experience. Landscaping design is great, of course, but what I kind of got out of this challenge with Walter is the adjacent experience that could definitely be just as helpful. So that's why we added in, construction or just some kind of a situation where you're selling, high-end premium services to homeowners that have plenty of money to spend on those kind of things, and that's something that they want to do.
And your customer is, we use the word affluent, but they have resources. They're trying to build a space outside of their home for entertaining or for extra space to enjoy the outdoors. So that means they have space, they have some resources, and they may or may not have a vision for
Sure.
what they're looking for. So we're not the least expensive option out there. I'm assuming that's accurate because we're looking at
Yes.
top value. Um, and that you want somebody to understand that the value is important, but you're still in a competitive market. So we got to provide great customer service. We got to sell that value. We got to help them see that we can go from soup to nuts, right, with the design all the way to putting the final plantings and masonry work and whatever else comes to mind, right? Because there's really not much you can't do. Waterfalls.
Yep.
Um,
We our ideal client is really somebody that has plenty of money and resources to be able to create these spaces, but they don't want to do it themselves. They want to just have somebody come in, handle all of that stuff for them, have the confidence in them, and understand the value that they're getting out of the service, because we are never the lowest price, and we're in a very competitive market, but our edge is really the value and the customer service that we place on it.
yeah. So, and we talk about that here in this third paragraph, where the successful candidate must be able to qualify the consistent flow of leads. So you're telling them that they're going to get leads. They don't have to go out knocking on doors, but they really need to be able to close those complex, high dollar projects. So again, we're hitting the fact that this isn't going to be, a do-it-yourself Home Depot project on a Saturday afternoon. Um, and that they should have some other experience with estimating and being able to manage some of the projects, because this person's going to be, they're not going to run the day to day, but they're going to need to interface with the homeowner, make sure things are progressing. They want to make that estimate's going to be really important. There's some design work that's part of this as well, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, and there's different types of construction, and you call out here the residential construction is considered a plus, because there's a difference between working in somebody's home and then working in a business where the building's under construction, there's nobody living there, and we need to be conscious of that in a residential role, that people are still living in this house, and we can't have it be a complete disaster every time they turn around. So that requires a certain level of background, um, and you're telling them that you desire to work in an environment where results are rewarded and supported, right? So that's telling you a little bit about your culture, and that's something that we sort of added that nuance from what we were talking
Mhm.
about yesterday, right?
Yep.
and the company will help this person if they excel and do the things that they need. Your company is going to help them grow as a professional, and have a career path as they move through. um, we're explaining to them that they need to be effective on the phone, being able to make sure that this is a project that is a good fit for the company. So they're going to ask some questions around, their budget. They're going to ask some questions about the scope of their vision. They have to be able to manage their time, because they're going to be expected to hit numbers, but they don't want to be wasting time calling on somebody who doesn't really have the resources to work on a project that you need. And they need to be able to work remotely and independently, but then come to the office as needed, and be there for the right um, at the right times, and talk to the right people. Um, and I think at the end here, you've highlighted that there's no cap on their income. We've given them a range of what we think they can earn within that first year, to be able to get to a number. And you've told them how to apply here. And excuse me, there's no overnight travel, and I think that helps somebody understand that this is all local around the St. Louis area for you. There's probably half a dozen counties that they'll be navigating, but they're not going to be going over to Kansas City to do projects. So
Yep.
I think um, you did a great job with this. You broke it out. It's simple. How different was this from, say, the ads that you've been running over the last couple of years?
Honestly, I mean significantly. The ads that we've been running for the last couple of years for this are, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but they look a lot more like the typical job posting you'll find on Indeed. It's structured very similarly. It kind of I suppose it blends in with everything else, and that's kind of what makes this stand out, right? There's no sense in continuing doing something that hasn't been yielding great results for us so far. So that's why I think that this is going to be great. And if you want to, bring in different results, you've got to do something different. So I think this is a great start for it.
No, and you speak to the point that we talked about on Monday with the mindset shift. Like let's do something different. Let's stand out a little different. And I I think I think this speaks to the person that you're looking for. It also will help that person self-identify. And you've obviously put the thought into understanding what it is that you're looking for, which I think will make it easier as you navigate the interview process. That you're finding somebody that does fit because you have more clarity about what that person needs to do. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Again, I really appreciate you sharing this experience and sharing your ad. And if we know anybody in the St. Louis area that has that fits this bill, reach out to Hannah at Quiet Village Landscaping, and they definitely need. How many people do you need for this role?
We're looking for definitely one. We probably have space to grow into two if the perfect candidates come along. It's one of those things that, we're always looking for great additions to the team. We'll make room if we've got the right candidate.
So and that's another great point. I think everybody can learn from that is that we always should be recruiting, even if you don't have that active job opening. Putting this out there, letting people know that you're looking for. If you run into somebody in your course of your day to day life and they seem like they might be a good fit, it's sort of investigate that. But always be looking. And if you came across if this ad pulled two candidates out that you were going to have trouble um, discerning which one was better, you might hire both of them, is what I heard.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again, Hannah. I appreciate you stepping up and sharing your
Yeah. Thank you.
experience here. Thanks. All right. So let me take this out and add this. So again, I talked about we're gonna jump into some of the templates that that we use to help you save time. One of the things that people get nervous about when we sort of change the process that we've always used, is writing that ad. That sounds a little different. That takes a little bit of practice. Okay, it does, and it will take a little practice. Hannah figured this out quickly. Um, the the um, the process of going through and doing engaging with the prospects and looking at resumes and reaching out to people, I think is the big difference that we recommend with Star here is that we don't go looking at all of the resumes initially. Everybody that sends us a resume gets treated the same way, and they're going to get a email template, which I'll show you in a moment. But it sort of speaks to this whole process. Everybody gets that. Everybody's asked to do the same thing. Everybody's treated equally. There's no bias coming in by looking at a resume. There's no bias by, somebody just like, I don't want to talk to somebody who graduated from that university. And I'm not kidding. I had a friend from college who got a nice job with a very large bank in New York City. And she and I both graduated from the University of Michigan. And she had a very let's just say a very heavy bias. She really disliked Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's a fine institution. Back when I graduated, we had a rivalry with them, but it's a great institution. There's really smart people go there. It's hard to get into. It's a great education. But she would throw their resume in the trash once she saw that they graduated from that institution. I mean, that's bias. I think it's wrong, but it's an example, and it's an extreme example of what some folks do. So we like to provide the recommendation to our clients that if you get a resume, comes in through Indeed, and it goes through your first filter, give them this first template that I'm going to show you, put them into the to the questionnaire, get them assessed, and let that help you discern it. Because if everybody's treated the same on the front end, then the equal opportunity, the EEOC is going to be happy. We're going to allow diversity to rise to the top. We're going to allow everybody to have a fair shake at this without anybody tossing a resume away for whatever they might see on the resume. Whether, if we're thinking that somebody has to have a particular education level in sales, a bachelor's degree is helpful, but is it really required? Does it matter if they went to Harvard or Michigan or Central Michigan or Towson State? It doesn't. I don't know that it matters. We want somebody that has skills to relate to people. We want somebody that has skills to go out and build rapport, that's likable, that can go out and close business. So I think that's a sort of a misnomer. So we're going to jump into the templates. So I have them broken out here. There's basically, these are all the templates that you might use, and the idea that these get emailed out to our candidates at various levels, and they help us do this quickly. We can build them into our ATS system. We can put them as templates in our Outlook, in our email, so that as somebody moves through, I use my CRM membrane, and that we have a process built in, that the steps are all built in. These email scripts are part of that. So when somebody moves to the next level, I can email them like, here's congratulations, you've moved to the next level. We'd like to have a phone screen with you, or we'd like to bring you in for the next interview. And it's all written. And you'll notice here, I'm going to switch the screens because I have them here. They're a little harder to read. So let me add this piece. And I'm going to be able to scroll through these for you. So each template, and you'll have access to these tonight with the replay. These templates are written so that you can quickly send these out to the candidates. It gets to the point with the candidate. There's not a lot of fluff. We don't want to waste a lot of time. My system, automatically populates the name, but you'll be able to. You have these built for the roles that you're sharing in your ATS system or in Outlook. So we tell the candidate that there's a particular role, and then what the next step is. So the first one here is that we have an opening, and we think you might be a fit. Now, this is where if you're out there looking and you happen to see somebody's resume, because the unemployment levels are where they are, you might want to go out and start to peruse things. This template helps you engage with that person quickly. You tell them you have a role, and you explain what it is, and then you tell them how you found them, and then the link to the job posting that they can go to on your like Indeed, if you're using Indeed, and then that will help them jump into your process at the beginning. So if you're out there looking for candidates, this template helps make it a little bit easier for you. And then each one of these has a certain purpose, where and I've highlighted this at the beginning. Thanks for getting back to me. Can we talk? Thanks for sending in your resume. So the first two are for if you're out there searching for yourself, trying to find somebody. The rest of these are going to run them through the process that we're recommending with STAR. So thanks for sending in your resume. And then here's how you apply. There's a phone screen component here. We're asking them to be available for a 10-minute phone screen, which we'll cover here in about 40 minutes. We'll talk about what that phone screen looks like. Each one of these are short, simple, to the point, and help the candidate understand what they need to prepare for. And I think that's something that we need to be fair with. If we want them to show up and be prepared to talk about something, we should tell them that prior to the actual conversation, the actual interview. So just before this challenge started, I had sent out a link to someone to take an assessment this morning. They took it very quickly. They came back recommended. So I was able to immediately send them a email from this list and say, hey, I'd love to have a phone conversation with you on Friday at 4 o'clock Central Time. If you're available, please, share the best number to reach you. And it just, this whole thing happened in 5 minutes because I had this structure in place. The templates are all there. So it will save you time and not having to script out an email and having to think about it. It's all here if we build these templates out. So whether you're having 2 interviews or 3 interviews, whatever that looks like, you build these out to match up with your system. And I like to tell people at the beginning that our process is these many steps, and we can navigate this process in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending upon how big the process is. I like to give them that whole picture on the front end so they can know where they are in the process. So I think that's important, fair to them so that they understand. And if there's somebody that's got 3 or 4 opportunities that are on their desk, they might not want to wait, or they might say to you, and I've had this happen, hey, I've got a couple of other job offers here waiting for. Is there any way to expedite this? And if they've scored really well on the assessment, I take a look at their resume and they seem to have the experience that ties into what we're looking for, I might make that accommodation. And it might be important, but you get to make the decision because you've told them what to expect. And one of the things that we do with the phone screen, and you'll see the scripts that I use, the phone screen, I want them to have the job posting in front of them. So I tell them that in the email, and I confirm that with them. So please, the only thing you need to do to be prepared for our phone conversation is to have the job posting that you saw on Indeed in front of you. So, because I'm going to ask you some questions. And that's one of the things that we look at when we score the phone screen. Did they follow a basic instruction? And it's hard to ask them if they've done something that we didn't tell them we wanted to do. So if you want them to be prepared for something, if you want them to have a certain document with them, or you want them to bring some sort of references to an interview, give them the proper amount of warning, and you can use it as just one more thing to evaluate that they do what we ask them to do. So, um, uh, so if there's these, go all the way through the process to the end, and feel free to modify these to meet your standards, or meet your particular situation. I think it's important to make it simple, clear, and have them built out. So you'll have those documents to take a look um, at your leisure. So the phone screen is a 10-minute activity. So what I have here in front of us is the document I use when I'm going to have the phone screen with the candidate. I'm going to score them, and I'm going to do this the same way. I'm going to treat everybody the same. I'm going to ask them the same questions. So this is somewhat generic, but it gives you a guideline. You'll get a copy of this. My script is always the same at the beginning, and I'm going to just go through these questions and score them as I go through this, and we come up with an objective number at the end. I do it as I'm going through this. It literally takes 8 to 10 minutes to do this if we take control. So the script that I use at the beginning of the call, I'm going to set the stage. I want to take control, and I want to be very clear about how this is going to operate. and I'm going to tell them that we scheduled 15 minutes for this because that's what I do, but we probably won't need the 15. And I have 5 of these to do today. So the goal of today is to evaluate if you're going to be one of the 3 people that I bring back, right? So I want to set that up, and I can say that in a very friendly tone. So the words on the page might seem more harsh than what you would feel comfortable with, but it's all about the delivery, and it's all about how your facial expression is when you're having this conversation. So I'm gonna look at this and read through it. So let's just say the candidate's name is Bob, and he's applying for the job at ABC Company. So it's going to sound like, "Hey, Bob, it's Walter Crosby. I'm phoning about that position you applied for at ABC. This is going to be a very quick call because I have 8 other candidates to speak to today, and I'm bringing in 3 people for an interview. So the purpose of today's call is to determine if you're going to be one of those 3. Are you ready?" And what I've done there is let them know that this is going to be short, brief, and sometimes I add to this script is when I ask the question and I think I get the answer that I'm looking for, I may cut you off to be respectful of our time. So I'm not trying to be rude, but I want to be respectful of our time, and so we can move through this. So are you okay with that? And I'm telling them that there might be a cutoff point of this, and I'm not going to just say stop. I'm gonna work through these questions and listen for their answers. And these are not tough questions. These are questions that are going to help me understand, because I'm listening for, do they have the ability to build some rapport? How warm do they sound on the telephone? Are they articulate? Are they stumbling around, right? Do they have some sort of presence and gravitas on the phone? That may or may not be important. For Hannah's role, they're going to have to get somebody on the phone, and they're going to have to ask them some questions. So they want to be able to pick up the phone and be able to build some rapport, be likable very quickly, and to be warm about this, because we're talking about somebody's home. So we want to be respectful of that. So these are the things that we're looking for in this call. It's not the nuts and bolts of the sales skills and the things. We're listening for what they're saying. Listening to, are they prepared, and we're listening for the emotion that we need that's appropriate for this role. So you can see the first question is scored a little tougher than the other ones because I've asked them to have the job posting in front of them. Either they do or they don't, right? And if they don't have it in front of them, I usually say something to the effect of, "Didn't I have that in the email that I sent you to have the job posting?" And they're usually scrambling to try to pull it up, right? And I let them have that little scramble there for a moment, but I score it, either they get a 1 or they lose a point, because it's like basic instruction that I'm looking for. And then, the ad says that you must have prior success, in the residential construction market. Tell me how you meet that requirement, right? So whatever your uh, prior success needs to be, you plug that in, and then you ask them to kind of tell you how they fit that. And then you listen for their answer, and you either score them, that they got it or they didn't get it. They either thought you either believe that they have that experience or they don't. Sometimes they're going to say, "I don't have that exact experience, but I have this experience." And that's something that you need to think about, how important that is and how well they explained it, because they're trying to sell you on what they have, not being exactly what you want. So if they can do that, is that worth a point? Is it worth half a point? These are something that you can adjust for. Tell me about the technical requirement that you have in the role that you're looking for. So whatever that might be, do they have that? And then you ask them that question here, because we're adjusting this document from the requirements of the job posting. And there's usually somebody, we're looking for them to have called on affluent homeowners, or we're looking for them to call on facility managers before. And so tell me who you've called on that are similar to this piece, and they'll usually be able to tell you a story. And you're, again, listening for how articulate they are. Are they on point? Right? That's what we're looking for, big picture stuff. and we want to ask questions around, you know, Hannah's role is, bigger ticket items. These are larger priced projects. So if somebody's been used to selling projects that are $1,500 to $2,500, and all of a sudden they need to go ask for $50,000 to $60,000, that's going to be a big jump. So is that something that they can do? They should be able to. We should bring that up now and see if that's going to be a problem. Sometimes I ask about sales cycle. If your sales cycle is long and they're used to doing something that closes inside of 60 days, are they going to have the staying power? Are they going to have the patience? Are they going to understand they need to navigate a more complex sales cycle? So my point here is that these questions need to be adjusted for your role, for your company, for the types of prospects that you're going to have. And I've sort of given this a generic feel to it that allows you to pivot to where you need to go. And you get to decide what's important in the role and what the skill sets they need to have. And I think that this gives you that. But we want to score this as we go, and then I'm going to go through here what we usually do to wrap this up. Each one of those get a point. We total that up at the end, and we have an objective number to look at. When I'm all done with this, I go back up and I think about, did he or she build rapport? Did they have some warmth to them? It's just in the general sense of the conversation. How articulate were they, right? So I just kind of go through here and circle the ones or highlight the ones that I felt that they hit, and I X out the ones that I felt they missed. So we go through the questions, and literally it should take about 10 minutes. So then I'm very excited at the end. I appreciate this. Thank you so much for taking the time. That's all I'm going to need today. Here's what's going to happen next. And then I tell them exactly what's going to happen. If you hear from me or my assistant by this date and this time, we'll bring you in. If you don't hear back from me, you didn't make it to the next level. And what I want to do is I want to pause there after I say okay, right? I want to pause and see what they do. Do they roll over? Do they try to get a little piece of information? Do they ask how they did? Right? These are things that are going to give me some sense as to whether this person is going to have the tenacity and the ability to go beyond somebody giving them a put off. It's a little thing. It's a little subtle thing. I don't wait for 5 minutes. I just pause long enough to see what they say. They say, okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Right? That's sort of a passive response. And they're like, okay, great, I appreciate you taking the time. Are you able to share with me, how do you think I did? That's a pretty, bold and aggressive question. And I happen to love that if I have a salesperson that's looking to get more information and dig in a little bit. So this is that way to score the phone screen, and that part of the interview process is something that we've done. I rarely look at the resume before I've done this. I don't want to have any biases in my head. And I literally don't look at resumes until I get to an interview. And I know that sounds really strange, but it really helps me focus on the candidates here when I'm doing that. So let me jump out of here and pull up my screens. So I've gone through the templates here. There's another worksheet that you'll get in the files here. I'm going to pull up a bigger version of this. So let me go back here and select here. So this document is meant to be a little bit of a cheat sheet, a little bit of like who's going to do what in this process, and it helps you think through all of the things that need to be done as we go through it's pretty exhaustive list. You may have one or two things that you do differently. You may not check all of these boxes, but it covers pretty much every step along the way. Who's going to do what? When are they going to do it? And if it's done, right? So if you're running this whole thing yourself, this is just sort of a checklist that you can adjust for your process that's been customized for you. But there's, as you can see here, there's quite a few steps that are part of this process um, that we want to cover to help the candidate understand the role, the company, and help you understand the candidate and if they're a fit for the role in your company. And some of these things, are later in the process. Some of these things are part of onboarding, but these are all steps that are important that we need to think about. And often I work with a team that they have a person in HR. They might have an office manager that's supporting the hiring manager to be able to handle some of the logistics piece of it. And that person really is the face of the company a lot of ways. So they need to be able to interact well. Sometimes they do some of the setup of appointments. So they need to be clear about what the priorities are and the things that the candidate needs to be prepared for. So this whole process allows other people to be engaged and everybody be on the same page, and they know the whole process. Because even if they're only doing 2 or 3 steps, they should understand the whole process because that'll help them be more effective in their particular role. So this again will be available for you, and um, I would really encourage you to work through this and think about what's your process, what might be missing, what you might want to add, what might be something to contemplate. Let me go back to my slides. So there's a lot of thoughts and concerns around using assessments. There's lots of different types of assessments. There's people that believe that assessments are illegal. There's some companies that don't believe in assessments, that puts them in a bad way. So let me address some of those beliefs, because I think the beliefs can get in the way of somebody having success. It can create bias. So I like to tell the story. I worked for a company years ago who used an assessment called predictive index. It's very similar to DISC, and they're behavioral personality type assessments. So one of the things I always like to talk about is like, what are we trying to measure with the assessment? And Myers-Briggs, DISC, predictive index, caliper, these are all great assessments at doing very specific things to help you understand if your candidate is a fit. So we used predictive index, and it was it helped everybody in the organization understand how to manage somebody and how to communicate with somebody. So we did that after somebody was hired, and it helped with when they answered the questionnaire. It helped us understand that each person was different. They had certain proclivities about how they thought, what they needed to do. So I'll give you this example. I'd sit in a conference room at a leadership meeting, and the gentleman who owned the company would go around the conference room table most months, and he would ask a question, and he would go around the table, and there's usually 7 to 8 of us at the table, and he would get to this one guy each time, and he would bypass him. He wouldn't ask him the question. He would go to the next person, and everybody would share their thought. Sometimes they were on point, sometimes they were off point, sometimes it was good information, sometimes it wasn't. But he would ask everybody except for this one gentleman. And I noticed this in a couple of meetings, and I went to the boss afterwards, and I said, "Hey, why do you go over him? Why don't you ask him the same question?" Because nobody thought about it. It was never an issue. So he's like, "Have you ever looked at his report from Predictive Index?" I'm like, "No." So he encouraged everybody to go look at people's report to understand the things that were important to that person and how we communicate. So as we reviewed the report, I'm not going to get into the details of the report, but it showed that this gentleman needed time to think about an answer when he was asked the question. He needed the time to process. So you couldn't go to him and say, "Hey, Mike, what's this? How do I do this?" Or "What's this question?" Like, and get his opinion. If it was a yes or no question and it was a logic thing, he could do it. But if you were looking for his opinion on what to do, given a certain set of criteria or information, he needed time to process it. It was just how his brain worked. It's not good or bad. It's just what it was. So I tell you the story because what that did is help me understand this gentleman and how to communicate with him and be more effective and be patient, right? I would ask him questions sometimes and he would just blow me off, and it was frustrating. But now I understood, oh, I got to say, hey, send him an email. Hey, Mike, can you think about this? I need to talk to you about this tomorrow. And that would give him what he needed to move forward. So that assessment did a great job at helping us understand how to communicate and manage. It didn't do a good job of identifying whether somebody would be a good fit in the sales role from the sales skills perspective. It helped us understand how to manage that salesperson. It helped us understand, if they had uh, if they had the ability to put up with some of the things that would occur in this organization. There was some hostility there. It was a terrible culture, but that would give us some information about how they would react to that kind of pressure. But it didn't help us understand. So when somebody tells me they're using an assessment, I'm like, that's great. Tell me what you're measuring. Tell me how that's working. But when it comes to looking at salespeople, they're benchmarking what somebody does in a social situation compared to what somebody would need to do in a sales role. So what does that mean? It's really this simple. If somebody is the life of the party at a cocktail party, or could go into a room and work the room and network it and be comfortable with doing all that, come out with some names and people like them, that's great skill set, right? But it doesn't mean they'll show up in the office on Monday and pick up the phone and make some cold calls. It doesn't mean that they can walk through a sales process and be effective at closing. It doesn't mean that they can be good at qualifying. And so that's what I mean about what are we trying to measure? So the assessment, the tool that I talk about, that's the magic of this STAR process, is a predictive sales specific assessment. And the questions are designed to elicit whether this person will be successful with the 21 core competencies that we measure and this role configuration that fits your role. So we're looking at two things. Do they have the basic competencies that we believe are important? Do they have the will to sell? Do they have the sales DNA? Do they have the right things in their head to be effective? And then do they have the real sales skills? So I think the best way for me to share this with you is to actually put this up on the screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. There's no way to do this justice in a short period of time, but this will help you with what we measure. And again, third party verified by a behavioral psychologist, organizational psychologist, every 5 years. And this has been around in one version or another for the last 29 years. So that it is validated, predictive tool for you to use for salespeople, not for anybody else in your organization. Salespeople, sales managers, and sales leaders is what it assesses. Nothing else. We want this to be applied early in the process. We want this will help you save time, because if they take this assessment and it comes back recommended, now you're talking to somebody that has a better shot of being successful. If it comes back where they're not recommended for one reason or the other, then we're not going to waste our time with them. This will save you time. This will save you aggravation, and it'll save you from hiring the wrong person. And that's really what we're trying to avoid. So you can see here, there's a total score out of 100. This person is a 98 out of 100. nobody's perfect. There's always strengths and weaknesses in an evaluation. This person has some ideal ramp up skills, and they meet the criteria for what objective management group, what we believe is the main these will to sell, sales DNA, tactical skills that meets that. And then we put in a role configuration for the role for this particular role, and we can have multiple roles for a company. So if we're looking for a closer, like Ken is looking for, we're going to set this up so that they're not going to go out hunt. That's not going to be a criteria, but they need to be able to close really well. They need to be able to qualify really well. They need to be consultative, and they need to sell value, right? Those are the things that we're going to look for in her role. So we have this recommended here really quickly up at the top. So that's what we're going to want them to look at. So let me scroll this up a little bit. So these are the things that we evaluate. Desire and commitment, the two most important findings that most heavily weighted findings. We're looking at their outlook. How are they feeling about their job today? This gives us a little insight about what they're thinking about. Are they a responsible person? Do they make excuses? And then how are they motivated? We also are able to tell, are they motivated, but how are they motivated? Extrinsically or intrinsically or altruistically? So we won't have time to get through all of this. I'm happy to answer questions and go through this report in great detail. Sales DNA, I like to describe that with what's going on in their head. What do they think about? What do they believe? So do they need to be liked by everybody? That's what the doesn't need approval. So if somebody needs to be liked, they're going to have a hard time asking tough questions. They're going to have trouble asking questions of a candidate. And if they need to be liked and they have trouble discussing money, it's a really bad combo that it's going to be next to impossible for them to get some sort of decision out of people, because they're never going to understand what the budget requirements are. So if you're selling a $50,000 backyard makeover, and this person thinks that $10,000 is a lot of money, and they don't want to talk about money, and they're uncomfortable with it, they're gonna struggle to have that budget conversation. There's stays in the moment. Can they listen to what's going on and stay focused rather than get emotional about what's happening? There's supportive buy cycle. There is 100% correlation with how an individual buys something of significance and what they will accept from their prospects. So what do I mean by that? That if you go out and do tons and tons of research before you go spend $3,000 or $4,000 on some sort of home appliance or some sort of construction project, if you do research and you go to lots of stores and you spend days working through this, that is going to be something that you are going to accept from your prospects as a salesperson. So I bought a car a couple years ago. I called the guy that I know and said, hey, I'm looking for this car, this color, this configuration. Can you go find me something? And I had ridden in a friend's car. I liked it. That was what I needed to know. And I called my guy. He set me up. He said, hey, you got your car here. You can come pick it up on Saturday. That was what I did. That's how I bought, right? I didn't go do a bunch of research. I didn't go look at Consumer Report. It fit the budget. It was what I asked for, but I'm done. Other people are going to do that differently. So the more research, the more likely you are to accept that need. Like, I need to think about this. I need to go look at some competitors. And that gets in the way of somebody closing business. The tactical skills are things that you think about as traditional sales skills. So we're measuring these against a standard, and each one of these have a level of importance and are weighted based on the configuration that is necessary for the role. Things like closing, the presentation approach, or they do quickly, they do proposals without really understanding things. Can they build a relationship? Are they going to be able to reach decision makers, right? These are things that may or may not be important. In Hannah's role, the hunting role isn't that important. Reaching the decision makers, they're going to be there. We don't need to go worry about finding them, but they need to be able to build a relationship. They need to be able to be consultative and sell value. They need to qualify really well. And that's those things are really most important. Those things, if they do those things well, the closing will take care of themselves. But we're also going to put some weight on the closing part of this because that's an important part of this role. So what we're measuring here with this process, with this assessment, is whether somebody is going to be effective in your role. Will they be successful calling on your customers, calling on against your competition at your price points? And it's only about sales. So I think it's what I started with is, what are we trying to measure? Well, we're trying to measure whether the salesperson is a good fit for our role. Do they have the skill sets that they need? And this is truly predictive. Predictive in the sense that we have a 92% success rate. And that means that 92% of the candidates that are recommended, if they're hired, 92% of them rise to the top half of your sales team. The other side of that coin is, if you hire somebody that's not recommended, 75% of them fail within 6 months. The really bad news there is that they often don't get terminated. They're not let go. They let them linger. So the problem gets worse. And this has all been validated by, we have the documentation for that. So I don't want to miss out on the importance of this. There's a lot of detail here that I'm skipping over just due to time, but it is truly the magic of STAR that this assessment just says recommended, worthy, or not recommended. And those are the three outputs from this assessment. The detail in here is amazing. It's a 39-page report that gets into how we get to these calculations, what's important, what's made up with each one of these calculations. So I'm happy to dive into that with anyone who's interested. We talked a little bit about the phone screen. I sort of jumped around here, but I think the mindset that we talked about on Monday applies to the phone screen. That we really want to have that control. We want to push back on some of these folks when they try to give us this long esoteric answer that doesn't really answer our questions. These are things that we need to focus on in terms of this interview, and be clear about what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And again, that phone screen template can be adjusted to meet your needs. So this script that I have on the screen, slightly different than the one I used before, but we want to get right to it. We want to tell them that that we're calling about the role with the company. You would be surprised how many times I call somebody and you're like, "What job is this for?" Because they've applied to so many, they're not really serious. They don't really understand. They're throwing the proverbial spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, which is not a great sign, right? Because they're desperate. So if we don't give them some structure to this, then this rambles and it won't be done in 10 minutes. I like to schedule these in blocks of an hour, where I can get 4 of these done in an hour, where I have a little bit of buffer time to take my notes and score these things and put them into my system, and then be prepared for the next one. I make the phone calls to them. I don't ask them to call me. So I, again, have control. So if I have a 12:15 appointment with somebody, when that clock turns 12:15, I push the green button on my phone so that I can be the phone's ringing at 12:15. I'm going to be on time. And if somebody doesn't answer the phone right away, I don't have another call scheduled. If they call me back in 2 or 3 minutes and say, "I'm sorry, I was on another call, I couldn't get off," right? I'll give a little latitude. But if they don't call me back, because I have an appointment scheduled with them, I actually send them a calendar invite that I'm going to call them at the appointed time. I have their number in there, so there's really no excuse for them not to be prepared. So I think the big part with the phone screen is taking control on the front end, and then taking control on the back end, and making sure that they're clear about all the steps, and we're not We're not leaving anything to chance. And I like to tell them that there's other people involved in this. There's other candidates that we're looking at, so that, because there are, but I want that to be out there so that they understand that this is, not a slam dunk. They need to put their best foot forward. These are the things that I think that require a different mindset, because most of the time we get on a phone with somebody and we're trying to sell them on the job, and that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to qualify whether this candidate is the right fit for our company and for this role, because that's what's most important. There'll be time to sell the company and sell the role towards the end, once we're confident that we have somebody in the in the spot where they could be successful. So that takes us to the bottom of the hour. I'm happy to answer questions. You can ping me on email. You can ping me on LinkedIn. There's the full report for the assessment will be in the documents that you get access to in the workspace tonight. I would encourage you to go take a look at that. There's a couple of ways that people can access that report. I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's basically, we want everybody to use this early in the process. So the way we price these out is it's unlimited number of assessments to encourage it to be used properly. We're not charging per assessment. There's a fee based on time of the period of time that we're going to be using the license, is what we call it. So there's a 6-month window or a 12-month window. And the other variable is the number of hires that we're looking to make during that 12-month period. So we have some companies that are looking to fill 2 or 3 roles, right? So there'll be a 3-person license with unlimited assessments. Then there's some companies are looking for 40 or 50. And the pricing structure is based on that, based on a certain amount of volume, based on the years of our experience. The other thing that's available through that process is the ability to go look at candidates that we're like, this guy's close, or she really has some of these skills, and we're thinking about maybe changing the role. So we have some tools on the platform that allow us to analyze and change the criteria without asking them to take the assessment again. They've answered the question that we've asked them, and then we can change what that looks like on the backside by changing the type of answer that we were looking for. So this gives us a lot of flexibility to really play around with, if we wanted to make this role a little bit more difficult or less difficult, or we're going to change it where we brought in somebody that was going to do the design work, or somebody that was going to do estimating, and they didn't have to do that. We can adjust for that after the fact without asking these candidates to do it. And we can do it for all of the candidates that are there. So I would encourage you to go take a look at those and shoot me, your questions. It's a really powerful tool. The phone screen's a really powerful tool. So tomorrow we're going to get into the interviewing process and how we approach that. I'm going to share some interview questions with you. I'm going to help you take some of the bias out of the interviewing process. I'm going to ask you to go a little deeper with your interviews. I'm going to explain to you how we structure our interviews. We're going to look at how we rip up a resume, what we look for in a sales resume. There's always a little BS in a salesperson's resume. It's there. So we're looking to figure out where that is. And then we want to challenge that candidate through this process. We're not looking to embarrass them, but we're looking to see how they handle some pressure. And that's what this whole process is, see how they handle pressure. So thank you very much for sticking with me. Day 4 tomorrow. Got a little surprise for you towards the end of tomorrow. So thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow. And if you want to hang for a second.